If you had day 17 in the Diddy trial as the biggest one yet, guess what? Bingo, you won, because today was probably the most eventful day as far as things that happened that were said on the stand, and most importantly, things that the judge said, because Diddy almost got kicked out of his own trial.
What if the most infamous celebrity gatherings never ended? They just changed hosts. And what if the new ringleader isn't just continuing the tradition, but escalating it? We've all heard the whispers, the late-night rumors, the half-buried headlines about the private lives of the rich and powerful. But this time, the story isn't just another tabloid tease. It's a bombshell, dropped straight from the FBI, and it's pointing directly at one of the most unlikely names in the industry, Snoop Dogg.
I have never seen, until Kendrick now, I'd never seen anybody from where I'm from, the area I'm from, the place I'm from, do what Snoop did.
We're talking about an illegal invitation-only gathering, allegedly held under the cover of darkness, where sources claim there were victims held against their will. The details are chilling, but here's the twist. This wasn't just another scandalous event. Insiders say it was a continuation of the same notorious parties that landed Diddy behind bars. The guest list? Reportedly identical. The host? No longer Diddy, but Snoop Dogg himself. The man who spent decades crafting an image of laid-back charm, of being the affable uncle of hip-hop, is now at the center of allegations that mirror the worst crimes of his former peer. And the question we can't ignore is this: if the parties never stopped, what else hasn't stopped? Let's rewind to where this all began. Diddy's downfall was swift and spectacular. In 2024, he was convicted on solicitation-related charges, his empire crumbling under the weight of federal investigations. Authorities seized 1,000 bottles of baby oil and multiple AR-15s from his properties, painting a picture of excess and control. Testimonies from victims described being transported across state lines for what were called freak-off gatherings, events where power dynamics were weaponized and where the line between consent and coercion blurred into oblivion. Diddy's world, once untouchable, became a cautionary tale. But as the dust settled, a new name emerged in the shadows: Snoop Dogg.
And as soon as I walked out of there, I went in the bathroom and I threw up. And just laid on the floor for like 30 minutes. His mama came in there and cleaned me up.
Now, why would Snoop, a man who spent years cultivating an image of easygoing cool, suddenly find himself entangled in allegations that echo Diddy's darkest scandals? The answer might lie in a lawsuit from 2023, where a woman accused Snoop and an associate of assault after a concert. She claimed she was pressured into silence. Her career dangled as leverage. The lawsuit was dismissed in private mediation, but the allegations lingered, a stain on Snoop's carefully managed reputation. Then came Suge Knight's podcast in 2024, where the former Death Row Records boss didn't just hint at Snoop's involvement in questionable activities. He outright accused him of having explaining to do about Shakur's tragedy and his ties to Diddy's party network. Suge, a man who knows the underbelly of the industry better than most, framed it as more than a feud. He called it a reckoning. But let's not forget the history here. Snoop and Diddy's paths have crossed for decades, their careers intertwined in the golden age of hip-hop. Diddy's parties were legendary, but they were also, according to prosecutors, a front for something far more sinister. Now, with Diddy locked away, the question isn't just about who's throwing the parties. It's about who's protecting them and why. Snoop's name wasn't just dropped casually in Suge's podcast. It was a direct challenge, a suggestion that the parties didn't end with Diddy's arrest. They just found a new host. The parallels are impossible to ignore. Diddy's freak-off events were described in court as orchestrated spectacles of power, where victims were allegedly lured with promises of career advancement, only to find themselves trapped in situations they couldn't escape. The FBI's tip about Snoop's gathering suggests a similar playbook: invitation only, high-profile guests, and victims who didn't leave by choice. If this is true, it's not just a scandal. It's a pattern. And patterns like this don't form overnight. They're built on relationships, on trust, on a network of people who know how to keep secrets.
Was instrumental, my older brother and my younger brother. So growing up on the east side, it was a lot of situations where we would be outside.
Then there's the matter of Snoop's public persona. For years, he's been the face of West Coast cool, the guy who smokes on camera and jokes about his past without ever letting the mask slip. But behind that image, there's a history of tension, of rivalries that turned dangerous, of alliances that soured. His relationship with Shakur, for instance, was once brotherly, but as Shakur's star rose, so did the friction. Napoleon of the Outlaws claimed Snoop was jealous of Shakur's success, that he resented the attention Shakur commanded. If that's true, what else might Snoop resent? What other shadows might he be hiding? And let's talk about the timing. Diddy's conviction sent shockwaves through the industry, but it also left a void. Someone was going to fill it. The question is, who? Snoop's name wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It was dropped by Suge Knight, a man who spent his life navigating the darkest corners of the music business. Suge's accusations aren't just idle chatter. They're a challenge a dare to look closer. And when you do, the pieces start to fit together in ways that are impossible to dismiss.
I own death row, so I do what the fuck I want to do.
There's also the matter of Snoop's own legal troubles. The 2023 lawsuit might have been settled quietly, but the allegations didn't disappear. They linger, a reminder that even the most beloved figures have layers. And if Snoop is now the one hosting these gatherings, what does that say about the people around him? Who's attending? Who's turning a blind eye? The guest list from Diddy's parties read like a who's who of Hollywood and hip-hop. If the same names are showing up at Snoop's events, what does that mean for the industry as a whole? But here's where things get even more complicated. Snoop isn't just a rapper, he's a brand, a cultural icon. His image is carefully controlled, his public appearances meticulously managed. So when a story like this breaks, it's not just about the allegations. It's about the system that allows them to thrive. It's about the people who look the other way, who choose silence over scandal. And it's about the victims, the ones who've been waiting for someone to listen. We've seen this before. The cycle of abuse, of power wielded without consequence, of secrets buried beneath layers of money and influence. Diddy's downfall was supposed to be the end of it. But what if it wasn't? What if it was just the beginning of a new chapter, with a new cast of characters? The FBI's tip isn't just a warning, it's a wake-up call. And if we're not paying attention, we're part of the problem.
Continue to engage in all these freak-offs with him, and he sounds really pissed off.
Hey, I really don't know what's going on with you, but I just want to just give you a heads up that I'm about to really disappear on you. You feel me? I'm not going to be playing these games with you at all, at all. So I don't know, you think you silent treating me, and you think I'm going to be, nah. You'll have a rude awakening. You'll just have silence.
Now, let's talk about the parties themselves. Diddy's freak-off events were described as lavish, as exclusive, as the kind of gatherings where anything could happen, and often did. The FBI's seizure of baby oil and firearms from Diddy's homes painted a picture of preparation, of a man who knew exactly what he was doing and how to cover his tracks. If Snoop's gatherings are following the same blueprint, what does that say about the industry's appetite for these kinds of events? Who's attending, who's benefiting, and who's getting hurt? The answers to these questions aren't just about Snoop or Diddy, they're about an entire culture, one that's built on the idea that some people are untouchable. But the FBI's tip suggests otherwise. It suggests that no matter how powerful you are, no matter how carefully you've crafted your image, the truth has a way of coming out. And when it does, the fallout isn't just personal, it's industry-wide.
It's only happening in Long Beach right now as far as me doing something for the community because that's where my heart lies at as far as straightening out my own neighborhood before I go elsewhere.
So where does this leave us? With more questions than answers, for starters, but also with a sense of urgency. If the parties are still happening, if the guests are the same, if the allegations are this serious, then what else is Snoop hiding? And who's protecting him? The FBI doesn't drop tips lightly, neither does Suge Knight. And when the two align, it's time to start paying attention. Because this isn't just about one man, or one party, or one scandal. It's about a system, one that's been operating in the shadows for far too long. And if we're finally starting to see the light, the question isn't just what we'll find, it's what we'll do about it. The parties might have changed hosts, but the game is still the same. And the stakes? They've never been higher. The answer might lie in a 2023 business deal that no one saw coming, until it was too late. That was the year Snoop Dogg quietly acquired Death Row Records, the infamous label once helmed by Suge Knight and tied to Shakur's final album. On the surface, it looked like a nostalgic power move, a way for Snoop to reclaim his roots. But insiders say it was never just about the music. It was about control. Control over the stories, the legacies, and, most importantly, the secrets. Because Death Row isn't just a record label, it's a vault of unreleased tracks, of unreported deals, of whispers about what really happened the night Shakur was lost. And now, Snoop owns it all.
Intelligent, kind, caring, compassionate, a man of God, a man of family and friends, and that's the kind of friend.
Why does that matter? Because the same year Snoop took over Death Row, the FBI's tip about his private gatherings started circulating. Coincidence? Or is there a reason Snoop suddenly needed to own the very empire that once defined the darkest era of hip-hop? Think about it. If you wanted to bury a story, or rewrite it, what better way than to control the source? Suge Knight, from his prison cell, has been dropping hints for months, suggesting Snoop's involvement in Shakur's tragedy and Diddy's party network wasn't just incidental, it was strategic. And if that's true, then Snoop's acquisition of Death Row isn't just a business move. It's a power play, one that could reshape how we see the last decades of hip-hop history. But let's talk about the money, because where there's power, there's always a price. The 2023 lawsuit against Snoop wasn't just about one night in 2013. It was about a system. The plaintiff, a woman identified only as Jane Doe, claimed she was pressured into silence after an incident at Snoop's studio, told that meeting him was a career move she couldn't afford to refuse. Sound familiar? It's the same playbook Diddy used for years. Dangle opportunity, demand compliance, and bury the fallout. Snoop's team called the lawsuit a shakedown, dismissing it on Instagram while Snoop himself stayed silent at the 2023 Super Bowl press conference. No questions taken, no explanations given. Just a smile and a wave as if the allegations didn't exist. A classic Diddy move. Deny in public, control in private.
Well, she just a strong black woman off the tippy. You know what I'm saying?
And then there's the marriage. Because if you want to understand the real stakes here, you have to look at what Suge Knight did next. In early 2024, as Snoop's name swirled in the rumors, Suge dropped a bombshell on Instagram. Photos of Snoop's wife, Shantae Broaddus, in Hawaii with another man. The caption? A prayer that Snoop's wife would stop going to Hawaii with other men. It wasn't just a personal attack. It was a calculated strike. Suge knows how this game works. He knows that the quickest way to destabilize a man like Snoop isn't through legal threats or public scandals. It's through the one thing he can't control, his personal life. And if Snoop's marriage is under strain, if his image as a family man starts to crack, then the walls around his empire start to crumble too. But here's the thing about Suge Knight. He doesn't throw punches without a reason. His podcast, his Instagram posts, his veiled accusations, they're not just the ramblings of a man behind bars. They're a strategy. And if Snoop is now the target, it's because Suge believes he's the one holding the keys to the kingdom. The question is, what kingdom? Is it death row, the parties, or something even bigger? Because let's not forget, Suge was the one who once claimed he could make or break careers with a single phone call. If he's turning his attention to Snoop now, it's because he thinks Snoop is playing the same game.
The few, like if we really dig, I believe we're going to find probably 3 or 4 dudes over the years that she had long-term side piece.
And then there's the matter of the parties themselves. We've heard the stories about Diddy's gatherings, the all-white dress codes, the high-profile guests, the whispers of what happened behind closed doors. But if Snoop is now the one hosting, who's on the guest list? Who's walking through those doors knowing exactly what they're walking into? Because here's the reality. In Hollywood, in hip-hop, in any world where power is currency, the parties aren't just about fun. They're about leverage. They're about who owes whom, who's vulnerable, who's expendable. And if Snoop's gatherings are anything like Diddy's, then the real danger isn't what happens at the party. It's what happens after. Let's not forget the financial ties either. Diddy's downfall wasn't just about his personal behavior. It was about the money. The fines, the lawsuits, the seized assets. Snoop's empire is built on more than just music. It's built on endorsements, on partnerships, on a carefully crafted image of reliability. But what happens when that image starts to crack? When the lawsuits pile up, when the FBI tips turn into investigations, when the public starts asking questions? Because here's the thing about scandals. They don't stay contained. They spread. And the bigger the name, the faster they burn. And then there's the Shakur factor. Because if Snoop is now the owner of Death Row, he's not just the guardian of its music. He's the guardian of its secrets. And Shakur's legacy is the biggest secret of all. Suge has been dropping hints for years about what really happened that night in Las Vegas. He's suggested that Snoop knows more than he's letting on, that there are conversations that never happened, truths that never came out. If that's true, then Snoop's acquisition of Death Row isn't just about nostalgia. It's about control, about making sure certain stories never see the light of day. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Because if Snoop is now the one in charge of Shakur's legacy, what does that mean for the people who were there, the ones who saw what happened, who know what really went down? Because let's not forget, Shakur's tragedy wasn't just a personal loss. It was a turning point for an entire generation. And if Snoop is now the one controlling that narrative, then he's not just a rapper or a businessman or a party host. He's something else entirely. He's the gatekeeper.
Man, I say a week before he died, we was best of friends.
And that brings us back to the parties. Because if the FBI's tip is accurate, if these gatherings are still happening, then we're not just talking about a few bad nights. We're talking about a system, one that's been operating for decades, one that's survived arrests and convictions and public outcry. And if Snoop is now at the center of it, then the question isn't just about who's attending. It's about who's being set up next. Because in this world, the only thing more dangerous than the parties themselves is the silence that follows. We've seen this before. The cycle of power, of control, of secrets buried beneath layers of money and influence. Diddy's downfall was supposed to be the end of it. But what if it wasn't? What if it was just the beginning of something even darker? Because if the parties didn't stop with Diddy's arrest, if they just changed hands, then we're not just looking at a scandal. We're looking at a machine. One that's been running for years, one that's still running now. And if Snoop is the one pulling the strings, then the real question isn't about the past. It's about the future, about who's next, about what happens when the music stops and the lights come on. Because here's the truth. In Hollywood, in hip-hop, in any world where power is the ultimate currency, the parties never really end. They just change hosts. And the guests, they're always the same. The ones who know the rules, who play the game, who understand that silence is the price of admission. But what happens when the game changes? When the host isn't just a host anymore, but the one calling the shots? When the parties aren't just about fun, but about control? That's the question we're left with. And it's the one that no one seems to want to answer.
Well, the things that I experienced with him were monster-like. That stuff almost destroyed my life.
But we can't ignore the patterns. The way Diddy's parties were described in court, the allure, the pressure, the consequences. The way Snoop's lawsuit was dismissed, the way his team responded, the way the stories keep surfacing, no matter how hard they're buried. Because in the end, it's not just about the parties, it's about the people who attend them, the ones who walk in with dreams and walk out with secrets, the ones who know too much or not enough, the ones who play the game and the ones who get played. And that brings us to the final unanswered question. If Snoop is now the one in control, if he's the one throwing the parties, if he's the one holding the keys to death row and all its secrets, then what does that mean for the rest of us? For the fans, for the industry, for the people who still believe in the music, in the culture, in the idea that hip-hop was supposed to be about something more than this? Because if the parties never stopped, if they just changed hands, then the game isn't over. It's just gotten darker. And the stakes, they've never been higher. So here's what we're left with. A story that's still unfolding, a scandal that's still growing, a truth that's still hiding in the shadows. And the only way we're going to find it is by asking the right questions, by looking at the patterns, by following the money, by listening to the whispers. Because in the end, the parties might be the headline. But the real story? It's about the silence, about what happens when the music stops and the lights come on, about who's left standing when the dust settles, and most of all, about who's willing to speak up. So tell us, what do you think is really going on here? Who's protecting Snoop? And why? And if the parties never stopped, what else hasn't stopped either? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is one conversation that's far from over. And as always, stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, in a world where the truth is the rarest currency of all, the only thing more dangerous than the secrets is the silence that keeps them buried. Until next time, keep your eyes open. The real story is just getting started.